In early 1962, park rangers working near the Grand Canyon began filing warnings they were never trained to write. These weren't reports about weather, erosion, or lost hikers. They were warnings about something responding from inside a place known as Cave 17. And then, just as suddenly as they began, those warnings stopped. Not gradually, not with an explanation. They simply disappeared from all official records. For years, Cave 17 had been considered routine. It was mapped, logged, and patrolled regularly. Rangers knew its paths, its chambers, and its dead ends. Nothing about it suggested danger, but that changed quietly, subtly, in the winter patrol logs from early 1962. Unusual language began to appear, words that did not belong in standard park documentation. Phrases like audio irregularities, unexplained echo behavior, and directional sound response started showing up. At first, supervisors dismissed it. They blamed it on strange wind patterns, hangar fashigi, or the natural, sometimes confusing acoustics of the canyon terrain. But the warnings kept coming, getting more specific and more unsettling. One ranger reported issuing a standard radio check near the cave entrance, only to hear his own transmission answered back seconds later. It was his exact words in his own cadence, but the sound was coming from deep inside. Kavi Desesechi, another patrol, described hearing voices that seemed to shift as if they were moving independently of the canyon walls, untethered to any physical source. Still, no official action was taken. The events were strange, but they were just sounds. That changed when the warnings became physical. Fresh boot prints began appearing inside restricted sections of Cave 7, areas that had been sealed for months, with no known access points and no authorized patrols scheduled. The prints were described as precise, evenly spaced, and purposeful. But the most disturbing part was how they ended. They never turned back. They would lead to a solid rock face or a sealed ravine and just stop. It was as if whoever or whatever made them had stepped directly into the canyon wall itself. Then equipment failures started. Radios would cut out at the exact same coordinates every single time a patrol passed them. Compasses would spin slowly, aimlessly, and then freeze, pointing in a completely wrong direction. Wristwatches stopped for minutes at a time before suddenly resuming their normal function, leaving rangers with gaps in their timeline. One ranger documented a particularly chilling event. He was standing still for nearly 10 minutes during a routine patrol. His body camera, a new technology at the time, showed him just facing a cave wall, completely unmoving. He had no memory of it afterward. It was a blank space in his day. By March, the strange occurrences were no longer limited to the rangers. Hikers began reporting something even more disturbing. They claimed the voices were calling their names from inside the canyon. When they would instinctively call back, the voices would answer, not as an issue, but as a direct reply. A conversation with something they couldn't see. The park couldn't ignore it any longer. 2 senior rangers were dispatched to investigate. Their mission was to enter Cave 17, document any anomalies, and put the rumors to rest. They went in just before dusk. Only one of them returned. He emerged hours later, stumbling out of the cave entrance, disoriented but physically unharmed. He was carrying equipment that did not belong to him or his partner. During questioning, his timeline of events changed repeatedly. He couldn't seem to keep the story straight. But one detail never wavered. He insisted someone else was inside that cave with them. Not another ranger, not a lost hiker, but something he described as familiar and deeply, profoundly wrong. Within 48 hours of his return, the official response was swift and silent. The warnings from rangers stopped, not because the threat was resolved, but because all patrols into or near Cave 17 were suspended entirely. The trail references were quietly removed from park maps. Rangers who worked in that sector were reassigned, scattered to different parts of the park, and were instructed in no uncertain terms not to discuss Cave 17. Officially, the public explanation was geological instability, a standard, boring reason to close off an area. Internally, however, sealed memos told a completely different story. Documents later uncovered referenced persistent auditory anomalies incompatible with natural acoustics. Another internal warning spoke of an unverified human presence with no identifiable origin or exit. But one phrase appeared repeatedly across different reports, a chillingly vague term: psychological contamination. It was never defined, never explained. By that summer, Cave 17 had vanished from all ranger training materials. The missing ranger from the two-man team was officially declared lost in a rock slide. A tragic accident, but no debris from any such rock slide was ever found. No remains were ever recovered. The case was closed. Decades passed. The story of Cave 17 became a ghost story, a piece of forgotten park lore. Then a sealed archive box resurfaced during a routine transfer of park records. Inside were the original patrol notes, maps, and several reel-to-reel audio tapes, all dated early 1962. One tape stood apart from the others. It begins with the familiar sounds of a canyon patrol, wind, crunching footsteps on gravel, and intermittent radio static. Then a second voice appears. It's close, far too close to the microphone to be an echo. It begins repeating phrases the ranger had spoken just moments earlier, but slower, more distorted, as if something was learning how to speak by copying him. Near the end of the recording, you can hear heavy, ragged breathing, followed by a frantic whisper spoken just off mic. It knows when you're listening. Then the tape cuts out abruptly. There are no patrol recordings in the archives after that date. To this day, Cave 17 remains closed to the public. There are no warning signs, no fences, no indication that anything was ever there. There's just an empty space on the map where trails once existed. Former rangers rarely speak about it, but the few who do, who remember that strange winter in 1962, all agree on one thing: the warnings didn't stop because the danger ended. They stopped because someone in a position of authority decided that silence was safer than the truth. If you want to understand why certain places are erased from history instead of being explained, make sure you're subscribed. Some warnings were never meant to reach the public. Thanks for watching.